So good evening, everyone. I'm Hector Gunther, Chair of the Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee to the Town of Barnstable. We meet twice a month during 10 months of the year, and then 2 months of the year, July and August, we only meet once. The public is welcome to attend and welcome to participate. So feel free to join these meetings if you if you'd like to. Under Massachusetts law, I am asked to confirm whether anybody is recording this meeting. Okay, no one is, so we'll move right on. So Chris Lauzon is not here, so Chuck, would you be so kind as to call the roll?
I will. Hector?
Yes.
Chris King?
Yes, sir.
Jeremy?
I am present.
Jim?
Present.
And Chuck is present. So we have 5, so we have a
Great.
quorum.
Great. All right. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, do we have any comments on the minutes?
They look good to me.
Well, I actually do have a couple of comments. Is Teresa online here?
I am here.
All right, Teresa, I have a couple of corrections and questions on page 1, where you say Vice Chair McKenzie called the meeting to order. I think I was there, so I would have called the meeting to order.
I will correct that. Apologies.
That's all right.
See, Hector, I didn't want to correct that because I like getting my name out there. So
You didn't want us usurped. All right, and then Teresa on page 3, the second bullet from the bottom starts attached to the minutes as a document titled Leveraging Debt Drop-Off. You want to fix the word drop-off. It's misspelled.
Done.
Okay. And then on page 4, and I'd love it if others on the committee would jump in. The first bullet, I wasn't quite sure what that meant to say. The demographic report showed school-age population would remain relatively the same. The MSBA would require that to be done again. Does anybody remember what that was about?
I don't know.
Okay, I would suggest that you end that sentence after the word same and delete the rest of that sentence about the MSBA. All right, Teresa?
I will take care of that. Thank you.
Okay, and then further down under comments from members that attended CIP, the first bullet, projects identified were brought forward with thorough concentration. Does anybody remember what that Jim Sproul, you were at that meeting.
No, I think I know the intent, if I'm correct in remembering, it was just how thorough the work that the school had done in their presentation. That's what comes to mind. I don't know if that's helpful.
All right, maybe we can edit that sentence and delete with thorough concentration and insert the words based on a thorough review.
I will do that.
And then the second to last bullet in that same section, where the funds are coming from to accomplish these needs and continue to engage the community to build support, something like that.
Okay.
All right, and then bottom of page 4, the last line, correspondence from committee members. Just have the point be presentation of the analysis report by presentation to the town council.
Okay,
And then there was one other. Oh, back on page 1, sorry, Teresa,
that's okay.
where it says staff present, just make clear that Sarah Ahern is superintendent of schools.
Okay.
All right, that's really all I have. Does anyone else have any changes on the minutes? Hearing none. Chuck, would you call the roll?
Absolutely. Hector,
Yes.
Chris King,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and Chuck is yes.
Okay, great. All right, so with those changes, we've approved the minutes. All right, next item on the agenda is the Public Works Department. Welcome Dan Santos, Griffin Bowden, and Mark Marinaccio. Is that your surname? Yep. Good. So Dan, I'll turn it over to you. The idea is that you're going to quickly, you and your team are going to go through the Public Works and CWMP presentation from the fiscal 26 CIP roster of projects.
Yes, good evening. Thanks for inviting us. Happy to be here with my team, or posse, if you will. We understand that you'd like a briefing on the capital projects proposed for funding in FY26.
Right.
And we have, you did mention quickly, I'm not sure that is a lot of projects, but
Yeah.
we're proposing to present the general fund projects, the CWMP projects, and the enterprise account projects.
Okay.
And unless you care to do something differently,
No,
that's how we will proceed. And I will have the subject matter experts presenting the projects.
okay. I would just focus the discussion on the more material items. So, just be guided by that. And, we have an hour or so or less if you can get through it in that amount of time. Just FYI to the committee, Betty Lutke just I guess she texted me, she's sick, won't be joining tonight, but she took a COVID test and that was negative. So that's good. Betty Lutke, if I'm not mistaken, will be the new town council liaison to CFAC going forward. Craig Tamish will step away. Okay, sorry for that interruption. Dan, go ahead.
Okay, well, I will turn it over to Griffin, and he will address the engineering projects, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Dan. Gareth, are you running the Zoom meeting? Can I get the opportunity to share my screen, please?
Okay, good.
There we go. Oops. Everybody seeing that okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, great. So thank you for having us tonight. My name is Griffin Bowden. I'm the town engineer for the town of Barnstable. As Dan alluded to, we prepared slides for general fund projects, CWMP projects, as well as DPW enterprise projects. We did not prepare every project, so we won't take all night, but we do have quite a few projects that we're kind of identifying as our shortlist projects. So with that, we're going to start with the projects that the engineering department submitted. I will then turn it over to Mark Marinaccio for the projects that the town architect submitted. And then we'll move into CWMP and enterprise funds.
Great.
So general funded projects that are in the town engineers department or engineers submissions. We have one project that we identified with the Marine and Environmental Affairs project that we want to go over today. That is the Katuitt Town Dock replacement and resiliency improvements. And this is a request for design and permitting. The project would fund design and permitting of the replacement of the Katuitt Town Dock and resiliency improvements to the dock and parking area. In 2021, we undertook an assessment that concluded that the dock should be rehabilitated or replaced within 3 to 5 years. In addition, the dock is more frequently flooding during storm events, and the regional low-lying tool predicts that the dock and much of the parking areas will experience sunny day flooding or flooding during normal high tide cycles prior to 2050. So this request would be to take a look at the dock from a resiliency perspective and plan for the future of the dock. Some figures showing the existing dock, and then on the upper right, you can see the FEMA flood map showing how this location is subject to coastal flooding. Any questions on this project?
Yeah, and just the coastal flooding, is that new? Or should we infer that that's caused by climate change?
Yeah, I mean, the anticipation is it will only continue to be exacerbated with sea level rise, and so we would be looking to plan for predicted sea level rise with this project to the extent practicable. Certainly, this is a low-lying location, and we may not be able to plan for all coastal storm events.
Right.
We'd like to make the infrastructure more resilient, certainly to daily, what we call sunny day flooding, which is your normal high tide cycle. We certainly don't want the infrastructure going underwater under that scenario, which is predicted by the current models.
You may not be able to answer this, Griffin, but would you say the sunny day flooding, is that more prevalent today than say 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
Yeah, we are certainly seeing higher sea levels. Now it's incremental each year, right? I don't think we necessarily have a sunny day problem here, though we do see when there are storm surges and increased tides, we do start to see that this is getting closer to being a problem. So
Okay.
I think the answer to that is yes.
All right, thank you.
I assume that natural phenomenon is just going to become an increasingly on the radar challenge for you all going forward. I mean,
Absolutely.
Yeah, water rising is just going to impact, so.
Absolutely. Every project that we're undertaking along the waterfront, both on the north and south side of the community, we certainly are taking that consideration into account. When
was it last replaced? Do you happen to know?
I don't know offhand. I can get that information.
No, it's not necessary. Thank you.
Moving into the public works submitted projects, I just included the list of the 66 projects that we had submitted for consideration in this year's CIP. And then again, we're going to hit the highlights of what we're identifying as our short list. First project I have is the Oyster Harbor's Bridge improvements. This is a request for $3 million to rehab the Oyster Harbor's Bridge, which was built in 1946 and is approaching the end of its useful life. There are a number of structural, mechanical, and electrical repair items that have been identified as being necessary. We recently undertook an evaluation with our consultant STV, who identified $5.5 million in priority repairs. This request would be to address the first phase of what we think is a two-phase project to address the priority repairs for the structure in order to continue the useful life. I have some pictures of just some of the types of repairs that we're going to be looking to address. There are certainly some dated structural members on this bridge that need addressing, and as well as some of the mechanical systems are beyond their useful life and in desperate need of replacement in order to keep the bridge functional. Any questions? All right. Next project we have is our annual public roads maintenance project. This year's request is for $3.95 million. With this project, we do roadway rehabilitation, milling and paving, reclaiming. We also do about $1 million worth of drainage each year. to improve our drainage systems and replace failed systems. We also address curbing and sidewalks and ADA accessibility associated with projects that we undertake. Our pavement management program has a current backlog of about $23 million for public road repairs. And we also have a backlog of about 140 known locations where drainage improvements are necessary. This year's program identifies repairs to the following roadways, which are Eel River Road in Osterville, Ocean Avenue in Hyannis, Nantucket Street Road in Hyannis, Old Falmouth Road in Marston's Mills, Bay Lane in Centerville, Dale Avenue in Hyannis, and Parker Road in Osterville. We also anticipate addressing 25 drainage systems and about 6 to 10 miles of preventative maintenance, which is usually chip sealing or crack sealing, will be undertaken with this contract. Some examples of some of the types of work that we do through this contract. And any questions?
Griffin, what do you mean by backlog? Is that identified roads that need to be worked on and you can't get to?
Yeah, yes. So every 3 years we undertake a pavement management evaluation, which quite literally our consultants drive every foot of road in town and assess it every 10 feet or so. And through that assessment, they identify what type of maintenance is needed for the roadway. Many of the roadways, it's preventative maintenance, which is basically continue to monitor. Or it may be there's some crack sealing that's needed where we fill in the cracks in order to prevent worse issues. And then some of them will rise to the level of mill and pavement is recommended, or reconstruction of the road is recommended. So through that process, they put a number to every one of the roadways and a suggested cost for the repairs to each of those roadways. And that's what that backlog ultimately is. So it's identifying the needs on every road in town effectively. And that comes out to about $23 million.
Okay, thank you.
Griffin, Chris King, does your plan keep you up to speed with the repair requirements, or does the amount of money you're asking for eventually have you falling behind?
No, we feel that this request has been our sweet spot for a while. So for as long as I've been the town engineer anyway, we've been increasing this request by $100,000 each year, which has allowed us to continue to maintain the level of service. The reports that we do every 3 years, we do an interim update every year, just to update on what we did in the past year. And it ultimately spits out an overall, what they call road system rating. And our road system rating is relatively flat for the last 10 years. So we've been able to maintain a uniform and a high system rating by this amount of funding. An increase in funding, we would probably get further ahead, but reduction in funding, we'd expect that we would start falling behind.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, we'll go to the next project. Next project, that's the Hawes Avenue culvert reconstruction. This is a project that was funded for design last year. And this project would complete the construction of needed repairs to a failing culvert underneath Hawes Avenue in Hyannis. This culvert has been failing for a number of years, and over the last few years, some sinkholes have developed underneath the road and directly adjacent to the road, which has created an unsafe situation and is at the point of failure. So the culvert is in need of replacement in order to prevent, frankly, loss of roadway. And I have some pictures of the area in question, and the bottom left's probably the best one to show. You can see kind of the saw cuts on the two sides of the road and some patches that have been done. You see the cone that's kind of depressed in there. That's a sinkhole that had developed and created an unsafe situation. And this is infrastructure that's time to repair. Any questions?
Yeah, Griffin, forgive me. A culvert is like a big pipe under the road that transmits water underneath it?
That's correct. It's a pipe underneath the road. In this case, it's a 30-inch pipe that goes underneath the road and conveys. There's a salt marsh on the north side of Hawes Ave,
Right.
and the ocean on the south side, and it basically allows water to go from one place to the other.
So it's not unlike the culvert on the road out to Dowser's Beach?
Correct. It's a different type of culvert, but it's similar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
It looks like this road is certainly one that's going to be more influenced by sea level rise. With the replacement, is there any movement towards raising that road to make it a little more resilient? Or when it comes to some of those projects, is that just a bit too much to chew off when you start thinking about, the 30 years down the road?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So we have not contemplated raising the road as part of this project for a couple of reasons. One is frankly cost control. The infrastructure needs to be replaced. And so we didn't want to take the project to an unattainable funding level, right? There's also some practical restrictions to being able to raise the road in this location. For instance, on the north side, the road is directly adjacent to marshes. We'd have to significantly impact the marsh to raise the road. As you get a little further west, the residences along the road are pretty close to the road. So we would start impacting their front yards, and there's not a lot of space to raise the road in this location. So I think this is a roadway we would certainly want to continue to monitor as sea level rise and coastal storm events continue to be prevalent. However, the solution may not necessarily be raising roads for everywhere. It may be just to make sure they're resilient to being able to go underwater and having proper evacuation routes. So that'll be a consideration that we'll certainly need to wrestle with as we continue moving forward in time.
Great, thanks.
All right. Next project is a continuation of our freshwater ponds monitoring and management plan program. This year's request is to develop a management plan for Hamlin Pond out in Marston's Mills. We've been doing this program for the last 5 years now, where to date we have developed management plans for Schubel Pond, Long Pond, Marston's Mills, Lovell's Pond, and Long Pond and Bursis Pond and Long Pond Centerville are all in development right now. This has been a successful program in our eyes to date, in that we've got to really understand the management needs of these ponds and have been able to implement solutions to help try to correct water quality for certain ponds. We've selected Hamlin's Pond as it was the next pond up in our prioritization list that we developed in consultation with MEA staff and conservation staff through our ponds management team here at DPW. Just some examples of the things we're trying to wrestle with in our ponds. Hamlin Pond did have an alum treatment about 10 years ago, and we are trying to ensure that we get out ahead of understanding the nutrient inputs into the pond prior to deteriorating water quality, and trying to be proactive with this particular pond as opposed to reactive, as we've seen in some of the other ponds that we've dealt with.
Griffin, if I could just interject a question. I'm looking at the list of DPW projects
Yep.
that Garrett sent to us, and you're skipping over some of these. Is there a reason for that? Have those been de-emphasized? For example, West Main Street and Pine Street intersection, public bridge maintenance and repairs. Any reason why you're skipping over those?
Yeah, so I can try to speak to that. Maybe Director Santos wants to speak to that as well. But we have internally have been reviewing all the project submissions, and prioritizing them and developing a short list for effectively what needs to happen in this year's program. And these are the projects that we felt we've identified as our short list. For instance, some of the projects that were maybe listed as higher priority on the list, perhaps we're not ready for construction yet, for instance. So West Main Street and Pine Street intersection, we're still in the design of that project.
Okay.
We weren't going to spend the money in this capital budget. So while we think it's a high priority, from a practical perspective, we could request the funds next year.
Yeah. And then what about item number 5, public bridge maintenance and repairs, $1,484,000 slated to be spent in fiscal 2026? Has that been de-emphasized?
As we were reviewing our projects and developing a short list for requests for this year, we identified that request was for rehabilitation of the Centerville River Bridge, so over near Craigville Beach. And while that's a priority, we felt that it could wait a year.
Okay, all right,
But
thank you.
I can add that when we originally develop our submission, we think about priorities and public safety and our facilities that are under threat of additional damage and whatnot. And in talking with Director Milne, what he does is develop a program based on an amount of money that's available.
Yeah,
And so recently we learned that the amount of money that was available was in the range of $15 million for bonding. So we went through our list and we pulled out what we felt were the highest priorities that would come up to approximately that amount of money.
uh-huh,
So that's what you see, and that's why you see certain projects we're not discussing because they're not part of that priority list that would fit within that budgetary constraint.
okay, so this priority list was developed after the first round of, after that all-day round of presentations by every department.
That's correct, yeah.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Hector, for that question. Yeah, we didn't want to go over every project this evening and take about 3 to 4 hours to do so. So we we tried to go over the short list projects here.
Okay,
All right, the next project that I have on the short list is the North Street sidewalk extension. This from West End Rotary to Stevens Street. This is a gap in our current pedestrian network in downtown Hyannis. Believe it or not, from the West End Rotary on North Street to Stevens Street, there is no pedestrian infrastructure, and it's a desirable walking corridor, certainly for along our pedestrian network. A road safety audit was conducted in 2021 by the Cape Cod Commission on behalf of the town, which identified this as one of the largest safety concerns of the West End Rotary area. We've been in the design of this project for a little while now, and really feel like this is a project that should be implemented in the next year in order to improve safety along this network. This is the area we're talking about. As you can see, there's no pedestrian facilities. You can actually see travel paths in certain sections of where people walk along the shoulder. There are some crosswalks that have been installed to kind of facilitate crossings, but there are not accessible or safe pedestrian facilities on this section of road.
okay,
It is a nice little frontage with that pond right at the West End Rotary. From my just quick digging, it does look like some private property there, but certainly Hyannis lacks a lot of green space. So I don't know if there's any thought of, will that project open up a little frontage there for perhaps maybe a bench or something, or is this simply just looking at sidewalks?
So we are just looking at sidewalks with this project. However, there will be the need to, actually, you can see in the upper picture, actually the upper two pictures, you see the guardrail. That's right along that pond that you're referencing. We will need to do some tree work in that area, so it will open things up a little bit. However, we also going to leverage the fact that the existing roadway in this area is pretty wide. So we'll basically be reducing the roadway width in combination with extending into the existing treat area. So we really do expect to limit disruption adjacent to the pond, which is always our goal, to not disrupt land adjacent to ponds and stuff like that. But so we weren't considering a bench or anything like that as part of this. It's really a pedestrian facility improvement, but it may open up certain viewing corridors as part of it.
Great, thanks.
Next project is our curb ramps and sidewalks ADA transition plan program. This project will continue to repair and replace curb ramps and sidewalks to bring them into compliance with the American with Disabilities Act and the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. We did a study last year that identified which sidewalks and which curb ramps in town in our roadway network are not compliant with the American with Disabilities Act. And this is a program that would identify a long-term strategy towards improving these facilities and bringing them into compliance. So this was to be expected to be a recurring request in order to continue to improve our facilities. These are just some of the types of deficiencies that have been identified along the network. All right, the next project is a public bridge replacement studies. We're anticipating 3 studies actually, because there are 3 bridges in our inventory that are reaching an age where we anticipate that we need to start the conversation of replacement of the bridges. This first request is for the Oyster Harbors Bridge, and it's a $500,000 request to study what the challenges associated with replacing the aging bridge, including what type of bridge are you going to replace it with, how would you physically replace it, what are the costs associated with it, what are the permitting challenges, etc. As alluded to in the earlier presentation, the Oyster Harbors Bridge, and specifically, is over 70, 80 years old, and is approaching the end of its useful life, and it's time to start planning for the end of useful life and evaluating the options associated with the end of useful life of that bridge. Replacement of a bridge is typically a 5 to 10 year planning process. So we felt that now was the time to start that planning process, specifically for that bridge. Any questions?
What are the other 2 bridges?
Yeah, it's the bridge on Millway at Barnstable Harbor. We anticipate will need to be replaced within the 15 to 20 year horizon. The Bumps River Bridge in Centerville, which is similarly on a 15 to 20 year horizon, we anticipate will need to seriously discuss replacement.
Okay, thank you.
Next project is a private road repair project. It's actually would likely be funded through the Sewer Construction and Private Way Fund, but we have it lumped into our DPW requests here. This last year, as you may recall, we recommended and was funded the reconstruction of School Street and Old Mill Road and Marston's Mills. Well, if you continue those 2 roadways west, if they turn into Asa Meggs Road, and that road's in significantly deteriorating condition as well. So this year's request is for Asa Meggs to rehabilitate that roadway. We would be looking to do this through the legislation that was passed in 2014, which allows the town of Barnstable from time to time, for the purposes of ensuring safety of the general public, to repair roads, repair private ways that connect to public ways, which this roadway meets that definition. And so we would recommend making the replacement of this roadway.
How long is that?
I don't know off the top of my head. Get that information. It's
Okay.
effectively from Santuit Newtown Road to the Sandwich Town line, which is actually not that long, but that's the area in question.
And I believe the legislation calls for a traffic study to monitor how many cars go over the road. Did the town do that study?
No,
For this
the
road?
legislation does not require a traffic study.
Yeah, it just requires a declaration from the town council of common usage of the private way by the general public. So that would have to be written into the town council order, which was done last year when we appropriated the funding for School Street and Old Mill Road.
Thank you.
Next project that we have is intersection improvements project for the intersection of South Main Street at Main Street Centerville and Craigville Beach Road. This is the intersection kind of over near the Four Seas Ice Cream. I like to call it the Four Seas intersection. This is a request for $750,000 to reconstruct the intersection, specifically replacing the antiquated traffic signal equipment with new traffic signal equipment, including pedestrian signals which the intersection, believe it or not, does not currently have. It is a very desirable pedestrian corridor, given the nearby locations, but it is not safe for pedestrians right now as there's no pedestrian equipment. It is also our oldest traffic signal in our inventory, and it's in need of replacement. We're not able to retrofit it to install pedestrian signals as part of it, for instance. So it needs to be replaced holistically. We've been designing this as part of sewer improvements in this area of town, which we'll talk about later on this evening. And so the goal would be to implement this construction as part of the sewer construction project in order to realize, efficiencies of infrastructure replacements.
But it calls for $750,000 to be spent.
That's correct.
With that, so there will be sewers going in at that intersection this year?
That's correct. That's correct. This intersection is scheduled to be sewered as part of the Centerville Village Sewer Expansion South Phase project.
Okay, and that's irrespective of whether the New England Wind 1 project is approved?
Well, currently we have the request for that sewer expansion project in this year's capital budget, as well as this request.
All right, but my question is, even if
the project is approved and permitted at this point.
The Park City Wind project,
Yes.
well, it's it's almost through permitting. Yeah, I agree with you. It's
Ultimately, the schedule of that project right now, at least as we're being told, is commence construction in the upcoming fall.
right.
Which would be along this capital budgeting cycle. So we've submitted requests in order to be able to facilitate the infrastructure that would need to be installed along that project.
Okay.
This is one of them.
Okay.
As you can see here, there's no safe pedestrian facilities across here. You don't see any curb ramps, no push button crossing locations, no crosswalks, and the traffic signals themselves are old, and the controllers for them are old and in need of replacement. Next project, and actually the next three projects are all similar. They're requests for pedestrian improvements along the New England Wind 1 route. These are all projects that we have recommended making pedestrian improvements while this corridor is being is having sewer and then potentially other utilities installed along the route. So this request is for design and permitting for the for pedestrian improvements along Old Stage Road from Shoot Flying Hill Road to Main Street Centerville. There's some examples of some of the existing pedestrian facilities along the route. They are in much of the corridor inadequate and not compliant with the American Disabilities Act. So this would be the appropriate time to make any corrections to these facilities. Any questions? This project in the same way is a design request for pedestrian improvements along Main Street Centerville. This would be from Main Street from Old Stage Road to South Main Street, just to replace the existing pedestrian improvements and the existing pedestrian facilities such as sidewalks with new ADA compliant sidewalks, working with the community to develop a desirable plan for the sidewalk and pedestrian facilities in this area. Some other considerations may be raised crosswalks, on-street parking improvements, and street trees. The pedestrian facilities along this corridor are not compliant under current conditions and are anticipated to be impacted by proposed utility work, both sewer and potentially wind. And it would be the appropriate time to make any corrective actions to these pedestrian facilities after the implementation of utility projects. So some examples of some of the pedestrian deficiencies in this area. In the upper right, you can kind of see very clearly, some of the sidewalks along this corridor are in desperate need of improvement. The third project in this bucket is the Craigville Beach Road pedestrian improvements. Again, this is a request for design, and this would be to improve pedestrian facilities on Craigville Beach Road from the Centerville River Bridge to Covell's Beach, which is an area that's identified for both sewer installation, as well as a portion of this is along the proposed wind route. So this would be to design pedestrian improvements as part of restoration along this route. In this area, there are some sections of this area have some sidewalks, but they're in need of replacement. And then there are large gaps in pedestrian facilities along this, highly desirable pedestrian stretch of roadway. We are also trying to look at opportunities to improve and address speeding along this route, which has been a problem at times. Obviously, a long straight stretch of roadway that people can sometimes get their speeds up on. So we'd be looking to try to see if there's opportunities to improve speeding along the road as well. So what I have, and so at this point, I will turn the slides over to Mark Marinaccio.
Thanks, Griffin. Thank you for having me. Mark Marinaccio, Town Architect, Town of Barnstable. The first project we're going to discuss tonight is the Barnstable Police Station boiler replacement. There are currently 2 boilers in the basement of the police department that were basically taken from another building and used. There were 4 units altogether. They installed 2. They have scavenged parts from the other 2. These units were never designed for this facility, and I became aware of it this year. We included it as a CIP because it's an important item to replace those with units that are designed for the facility. That's all I got. If there's any questions on that. This is the first community service project. This is mechanical improvements and upgrades to the Barnstable Adult Community Center. Last year in fiscal year 25, we received design fundings for upgrading to a basically electrification of the heating system there. We are in design right now, and this funding is for the construction of that. It would include new ductwork, installation of new insulation on those ducts. These units are at the end of their useful life. Okay, next project. This is the Centerville Recreation Field project. It was originally designated in the field study to be a multi-purpose field. While we were in design with the playground, there was a large outcry from the population, the public there, wanting to keep a ball field in the area. So this is designed for a Little League regulation infield with a short outfield there. This will be funded through CPC funding request. You see where, because the new playground includes a lower parking lot in order to create handicapped accessibility into the playground, this ball field needed to be shifted over. Any questions? Okay, next project at Griffin. This is the next phase of the Covell's Beach House improvements. This building is below the floodplain. Because of that, we are only allowed to make incremental improvements to it, less than 50% of the value of building over a 3-year period. We are currently working on funding to put a accessible path around the building at this point, and this funding would then be to improve the restrooms inside. You see the concrete apron that's around there. Currently, the building's not accessible by any means. There is a asphalt installed, I guess, ramp you'd call it, there that doesn't meet any requirements to get into the building. So the first phase of working on right now is to replace this concrete apron with one that's accessible to the floor level. And then the following project would be designed to replace the restrooms inside. Any questions? Okay, next slide. This is a request for funding to study all of our saltwater bathhouses. A number of years ago, probably 5-6 years ago, we did an internal study of the conditions of the buildings. What this does is puts funding forth to have some experts take a look at the sites, determine whether these buildings should be maintained where they are, whether there's an opportunity to install new buildings in the future, or whether there's a third solution, and have discussions about that. I think currently the only building that is above the floodplain is the restroom at Dowses Beach. But that building, because it's on the hill, is not accessible at all for handicapped accessibility. So we'd be looking at all of those issues and coming up with some solutions and recommendations. This is funding for replacement of the town hall elevator. A number of years ago, we started design for replacement of all the mechanical units in the building, as well as at the school administration building. As part of that, we had Siska Hennessy, who are elevator experts, analyze both of the elevators. They determined that both these elevators need to be replaced for various reasons. And so last year we received funding for design, and this year's request is for the actual funding to replace that elevator. It'd be a full mechanical upgrade, as well as a new cab. This project is for a new columbarium expansion at Mosswood. Currently, all of the columbariums have been sold, and that we're looking to expand the facility. This funding would be requested from the Kirkman Fund.
Sorry,
Design-
Mark. Sorry, Mark. A
Okay.
columbarium, what is that exactly?
Columbarium is an above ground niche where loved ones' remains can be placed above ground. It's a burial site, basically. They're made out of granite, and each one of these contains 32 niches, and they're basically sold for burial, above ground burials. So we've been talking to a company that manufactured the original 3 columbariums. They've come up with a couple modifications to this design, which we liked, which would be a little less expensive and give us more niches as part of that.
It's not a major revenue generation project. It does generate revenue, but it's not a huge revenue generation. Is that correct?
I really don't know the finances of it. Maybe somebody else can answer that, but I know that they sell them. They do make money from them.
Yeah,
But
the
there's
niche is,
a big need for them.
I think it's around $1,100, the cost of purchasing a niche.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's probably more aesthetic than it is revenue generating.
Yeah, the money goes into our perpetual maintenance fund.
Right. Okay.
Would it be true to say that you're not building out the cemetery's capacity as quickly by adopting this kind of technique?
So the project consists of the 3 that you see there at the end of the walkway. We're looking at a unit that would go in the center. Right now,
Mark,
yes.
excuse me. I think you had a different question.
Okay.
So the question is, by using columbaria, are we not consuming land as quickly? And the answer to that is yes. And there's been a great shift from burial of bodies to interment of remains. And so, yes, that would result in a lesser use of land for burials.
So remains meaning post,
Crematory.
yeah.
Remains, they call them.
This project is for the exterior restoration of the Hyannis Armory. This project is eligible for community preservation funding. Currently, the building's used for cold storage. We've had a number of projects there to remove asbestos from the building. As you can see in the photographs, the steel arches are corroding and expanding, which are breaking the brick and allowing water into the system, which then continues the freeze and worsens the freeze-thaw cycle. The roof is leaking at various locations. The windows are corroded, and some of them are in danger of falling in. This project would basically designate the building of historic significance because of the event that happened there of President Kennedy's inauguration speech and acceptance speech, and would basically make the building weather tight and update it for whatever use would be used in the future. This is a project to make structural and exterior skin repairs to a hangar at the Cape Cod Airfield in Marston's Mills. The hangar was built in the 20s. It is in decaying condition. It needs some structural elements repaired, as well as a roof and siding on the building. This would be fundable through community preservation funds. It's in use as part of the airport. It's an important element of the functioning of the airport.
How much use does that airport get?
My neighbor across the street built an airplane in his garage and houses it there. So there is a following of people who have airplanes and fly that are there. I don't know what the revenue stream is or how much business he does. We are looking at as a separate project, funded through a different. We actually have some CPC funding from 2 years ago to do some design work to replace the underground fuel tank that is there right now with an above ground fuel system. So it's used, but I don't know what the activity is or what the income levels are.
Gareth Markwell, would you have any idea what's the revenue the town gets from the airfield?
Yeah, the dollar amount I wouldn't be certain of, but essentially I think with that lease, your tenant is maintaining the property through field maintenance and minor building maintenance. It's any revenue it's generating is supporting it at this point. Yeah.
So it's not a moneymaker for the town.
No.
Okay.
This project we talked about last week is going to be modified slightly. This is mechanical improvements to the old town hall. The JFK Museum is currently planning some renovations, and we have been meeting with them. We need to meet with them again to talk about their improvements. This funding of 1.9 million was to replace all of the mechanical units in the building. We're going to be pulling this back. We're going to be looking at the budget this week to just replace the boilers that are in bad shape in the basement, as well as the water heater. And the future projects would deal with the other items.
So the amounts that's shown here, this is before or after you modified the?
This is before.
Okay, what's the proposed spending after?
Well, the The museum is currently in design for modifications to the museum for layout.
Mhm.
So we have to meet with them and find out what they're planning to do. The building's a leased property, so as a landlord, we have certain responsibilities according to Dave Anthony. It does not include modifying the space for them. So again, we're looking at basically the head end units, head end equipment to provide heat to the building. If they change the layout and distribution, we would have to talk to them about what that means down the
Mark,
road. So we're
Mark.
looking at probably look. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think you were going there. I think he's interested in what's the cost of what we're now going to have as a project, replacing the heating units and the water heater.
Yeah,
Right.
you're probably around 350 to 400,000.
Yeah, yeah.
That round.
And you say the town owns the building and rents it to the JFK Museum?
Yeah, we do. There's 60,000 people that visit the museum annually. So it's a very popular tourist destination. And the town, this is 1929 was the original town hall that was built
Wow.
for the town hall. And once the town acquired the state normal school buildings, they moved to those buildings and this building became a leased property.
Uh-huh.
So I have one quick question. I did attend the presentation at Town Hall on remotely, and I seem to remember that there were some third party or outside funding opportunities for general fund DPW projects. Was that the Community Preservation Fund, or are there other funds that are available?
This project, a number of years ago, we did an exterior restoration to the entire building as well as the portico. And that was all funded through CPC, through historic preservation funds. Generally speaking, CPC doesn't pay for mechanical improvements to buildings or pavings, like parking lots or anything like that. So this funding wouldn't be applicable for CPC funding.
Okay. And I wasn't considering just the presentation, Mark, that you had made, but for all of the general fund projects that were presented.
Yeah, there are other opportunities for funds. That includes, in addition to CPC, the Kirkman Fund provides funding to not only libraries, but the cemeteries. So for the columbarium, for example, we'd be seeking funds from the Kirkman Fund. And other sources could be the community development block grants to fund certain things like handicap improvement projects. We have Chapter 90 available to us to fund some of the road projects. So these are examples of some of the other funding sources. And then the final one I think was mentioned was we have a sewer expansion and private road fund that allows us to fund that Asa Miggs project.
Okay. And none of the funds that you just talked about have been realized in the budget just yet.
That's correct.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. And now we are on to the request for this year's request for comprehensive wastewater management plan projects.
And Griffin, before you start, so is this the last part of the presentation?
So we also have the DPW enterprise funds,
Okay.
if you would like to hear those as well.
Yeah, so we're an hour into this. I think we're good to cover both CWMP and the other item you just mentioned.
Great, I'll try to move quickly. So the first project is the Centerville Village Sewer Expansion Project, the southern phase. This is the project I alluded to earlier, which would be the southern half of sewer expansion along the planned New England Wind 1 wind project. Again, as alluded to earlier, the anticipated schedule for implementation is as early as this upcoming fall. So we have submitted this request for the funding in order to position ourselves for the sewer construction along this route. areas in dark green are where the project is. Any questions on this project?
So just a couple of questions, Griffin. I know there's been some amount of controversy regarding the trees along this route. The sewer expansion, are you able to say with any degree of confidence how much those would affect some of the old trees and the tree roots?
The sewer expansion will not impact any trees. There's a significant amount of utilities proposed along the route.
Right.
Both sewer, duck banks for the wind project, as well as water replacement. The combination of all of that utility work may impact some trees, though they have not been quantified to date. At least we have not got a final number from the wind developer, and that's being reviewed as part of their design.
Okay, but the sewers per se won't.
The sewers will not impact, are not anticipated to impact trees as currently designed.
Okay.
Other than potential living above the roadway, but that's typical but there wouldn't be any tree removals necessary for sewer construction.
You said potential what above the roadway?
Limbing of limbs above the roads.
Yeah.
Just because with the sewer construction, we have to bring in large excavators. At times we have to take limbs down in order to facilitate the excavator to dig.
Right. So this is 16 million for construction to be spent in fiscal year 2026.
That's the current schedule, yes.
And when would this construction start?
Potentially as soon as next fall.
So 3 or 4 months into the fiscal 2026.
Yeah, we
Correct.
would not be spending the entire amount in fiscal year 26.
No, we would anticipate it would take at least 2 years to finish the construction along this whole route.
Okay, so why isn't the 16 million spread in the budget
Because we
across?
can't, we have to award a contract, we have to have all of the money.
So the 16 million indicates that it's committed in fiscal 2026 because you've contracted to spend it.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Correct. We anticipate bidding the project as early as this summer, potentially into the fall. So we would need the funding available to sign the contract.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Next project is the Finney's Lane Neighborhood Sewer Expansion Project. On the next page, I will show you where this is, but this is sewer expansion into neighborhoods on the west and east side of Finney's Lane between Route 28 and Route 132. I will note, this is the second largest project by properties and flow in phase 1 of the program. It's going to connect about 630 properties and collect about 80,000 gallons per day and remove a significant amount of nitrogen from the Centerville River watershed, which is the ultimate goal of the CWMP. So the areas in pink, these are the properties that the light pink, not the dark pink, there's multiple pinks, but the light pink are the parcels that are anticipated to be connected as part of this project.
And what's the construction period for this? 3 years?
It's anticipated to be 3 years. Not on any particular road. There's about 40 plus roads in here, but the culmination of the whole contract, we anticipate 3 years.
630
parcels.
Wow.
Not every one of the parcels necessarily has a building on it, but we've just that many parcels. And then we will undertake a analysis to calculate what the equivalent dwelling units are as we continue to proceed with the design to understand what the assessments will ultimately be. Okay. All right. Yep. That's just, I'll continue. Those are the 2 construction requests for this year. The rest of the requests are all design funding requests. This next request I characterize as the municipal property sewer connections, design and permitting. So this is a request to design and permit the connections to the town-owned properties that now need to be connected to sewers based on the projects that we have implemented or are about to implement in the next handful of years. So we've identified 7 projects along either projects again that have been implemented or are about to be implemented that will need to connect. And so this is funding in order to design those connections, and then we will come with a request next year for the construction of those requests. So properties in question are listed at the bottom. And this is a map showing where they are.
Okay.
Next project is a request for design funding for the Long Pond Area Sewer Expansion Project. This is actually the largest project in phase 1 of the CWMP, about 100,000 gallons per day. Less properties, but more nitrogen removal, just due to the parcels that are being connected. This is a request for $750,000 to complete the design of this project. We're anticipating the construction request for this project next year on the order of $40 million. Areas in purple are the areas that will be sewered with this project. One thing to note is this project was expanded from the original anticipated scope. The reason for that is we've been talking with the schools for a couple of years about the condition of the septic system at the Bay Lane School, the Centerville Elementary School on Bay Lane. That septic system is currently being limped along. So we tried to expedite expansion in that portion of our program in order to access and provide a sewer solution to that property, so that there didn't have to be a significant investment in a septic system there. So we did add that. We did add a few roadways in order to get to that property. And so that is why this project ultimately ended up being larger than the Finney's Lane project. The Finney's Lane project actually was originally the largest project, but we did add a few roads in order to take a common sense approach to try to address the school as quickly as possible. All right, the next project is a Prince Cove sewer expansion area. On the next next sheet, I'll show the parcels in question. There's about 330 parcels in this project. This is entirely within the Three Bays watershed, which is our most heavily impaired watershed in town. So this is significant progress towards sewer expansion in the area. And this is actually parcels that are directly adjacent to Prince Cove. And so they'll have a relatively fast impact on water quality within Prince Cove and the Three Bays watershed. This request is for survey and preliminary design. And we're anticipating construction to commence in 2029 for this project. Areas in the, I guess I'll go with magenta color, are the parcels in question for this project. You can see they're kind of at the head end of the Three Bays, of the Three Bays. Next project is a Great Marsh Road sewer expansion project. This project this request is for final design. Preliminary design has already been appropriated and is underway, as well as the survey is underway. This project will install approximately 7 miles of sewer, connect 460 parcels to sewer, and is anticipated to start construction in 2028. The areas in question are the areas in brown, so this will leverage some of the infrastructure we are currently installing as part of the Centerville Village sewer expansion north phase, which is breaking ground on Shoe Flying Hill Road, has recently broken ground on Shoe Flying Hill Road, as well as the infrastructure we've installed on Finney's Lane. So it'll be leveraging kind of the infrastructure on both sides in order to sewer these parcels. So continuing to build out the sewer in this area. Project is the Huckins Neck Road sewer expansion project. This request is for survey and preliminary design. It will connect about 150 properties located off of Huckins Neck Road and on the north side of Lake Wequaquet, Shallow Pond, and Versus Pond. We're anticipating construction to start in 2030. And the area in dark green is the area in question, which we anticipate will have significant improvements on water quality within Lake Wequaquet.
Griffin, just one question. Like last year, the Huckins Neck was listed for design work in 27. Is there any rationale for why that was advanced up to 26 or?
Sure. So we evaluate the schedules each year, and we felt that in order to meet the ultimate construction date goal, we needed to get started. Given the amount of workload that we have, we needed to get started on this in the upcoming year with the survey and preliminary design. We see about a 1-year time frame to complete that work, and then we'll need the 2 years to do the final design. And so, as we've kind of evaluated timeframes for completion of the projects, it was felt that we needed to get money to start this effort now.
So starting the effort earlier, but the construction would probably still follow the same timeline as FY30,
Correct.
I think it was. Yeah.
That's correct. Yep. That's it for CWMP. Now we're on to the Public Works Enterprise Funds, and I'll turn this over to Dan.
Thank you very much. I'll wrap it up. Starting with the Water Pollution Control Division, 2 projects being proposed for fiscal year 26. First project is under our pump station rehabilitation program, which is a program we began after doing a comprehensive evaluation of our pump stations back in 2019. And for this year, we are looking to, and you can go on to the next slide, to replace the Marks Path pump station, which is not far from DPW, between us and the intermediate school, right along Route 28. It's at the end of its useful life. It's actually a very difficult location to access, so we are proposing to not only reconstruct it, but to move it onto town property, which also provides the ability to have increasing flows, which will help us meet the requirements of the CWMP and sewer additional properties in this area. Okay. The next one is not an exciting project, but we're proposing to replace a fence along Burses Way at our property boundary there for a couple of reasons. One is it's in sad shape and it's in need of upgrading and replacement. Currently, the state has a project underway. You may have seen if you were over that way today. We've started some traffic rerouting there because we're putting sewers in Burses Way associated with the shared use path, which will run from the intersection of Pitchers and Burses down to Route 28 and right along the fence line. And so we want to put a new fence in, new barbed wire for restrict any illegal access, but also to put some screening between the treatment plant and the bike path, so people who are enjoying the bike path and the shared use path aren't being treated to all of our wastewater facilities. For the Water Supply Division, we have 2 projects as well, and these are 2 projects that we have been doing annually for many years, honestly. The first is the pipe replacement and upgrade program. That's $1.5 million per year. We started this after a water master plan was conducted in 2007, and we have been working towards completing the needs of that master plan since then. It's a 30-year program, and this year we are proposing to replace water lines in the Finney's Lane, Longview Avenue section where we have installed sewer and where the duct bank goes through, and this will complete upgrading all the utilities in that particular section. So that's how we propose to spend that $1.5 million in fiscal year 26. Second annual project is our Wells Pump Stations Treatment Plant Repair and Upgrade Program. This is a $200,000 a year program, again, based on master planning and facility evaluation, asset evaluation of all of these particular facilities. And this basically looks at upgrading the buildings themselves, the roofs, pumps, our control systems. And in fiscal year 26, we will be doing exactly that, looking at some of the building trim and painting, looking at our SCADA system, which is our supervisory control and data systems, which allows us to remotely monitor and manage our pumping, and as well as some mechanical and electrical repairs. We usually retain some for some of the funds we retain for some unknown things that always come up every year. So we have funds available to address those things. Then moving on to the solid waste division, we also have two projects there. The first one is replacement of the compactor units. These are, as is indicated, and then you can see in the next photograph, these are what compact the trash or the recycling into the containers and allows us to maximize the volume. So we're not transporting light loads. We want to put as much in there as we can, certainly within the weight constraints of the vehicles and the roads that we utilize. Usually every year we replace some of these. This year we'll be replacing 2 compactor units. We do have mechanics at the facility, and we do get as absolute much life out of these as we can by doing in-house repairs and maintenance. But when they're done, they're done. And then finally, we're proposing to replace 2 container units, and these are the containers that the compactors press the waste into, and these are $25,000 a piece. And we usually replace 2 of these every year. You can see over the next several years, our proposal to replace 2 a year. And again, we try to weld these and patch them together as best we can, but at some point it becomes more trouble than it's worth. And when they're basically at risk of being unsafe, we want to replace them. So,
Hey, Dan, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So these containers, so when the recycling or the waste is transported away, these containers are put on trucks, correct?
That's correct.
And then they're returned to the solid
Yes.
waste station.
Yes. So we have extras. So we rotate them. So we take one out, move a new one in, and then a truck will take the full one away.
Right. And what is the time period to transport a container to wherever they're taken and then returned? Is that several business days or a week or 2?
It's within the week. We don't do it ourselves. It's done by our contractor.
Right.
But we always have enough to make sure, even in the summer busy time, that even if they didn't return it immediately, we have spares.
Yeah. And how many containers are taken from the solid waste station every week or every day, if you could make a guess?
It's on average 2 a week.
2 a week.
On average. So in the summer, it's much more, and in the winter, it's much less.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
This one we have withdrawn, so we don't need to talk about that. So those are all the projects that we had proposed to present to you. And we're happy if you have any additional questions, or if there's something that we didn't discuss that you have a question about, we're happy to take those questions.
Committee, any questions from members of CFAC?
No, it was for me, this is a terrific presentation. Thank you so much.
No further questions, and I would echo that statement. A very good organization, and you're on top. It seems like you're on top of all of a lot of projects with a lot of moving parts and a lot of complexity. So thank you for being who you are and where you are.
Thank you.
I do have a question. It seems to me last year, Griffin, on CWMP, we were talking about the Route 28 West sewer construction. What is the timing for that? Has that changed?
Oh, we'll be bidding that project within the next 2 months, and we anticipate construction to start in the fall.
Okay. And that will go from Finney's
goes-
Lane to,
just east of Route 149,
right,
as well as some additional roadways that are necessary. But yeah,
right. And the pump station at the corner of one that we built at the corner of Finney's and 128, that's just there waiting to be put into use when the sewer is installed.
yeah. So that pump station is currently, we've accepted that pump station, so it's the work is complete. They're doing through the punch list items for the closeout of that contract. We will be accepting flow from, there's about 150 parcels plus or minus that are able to connect to that sewer soon. So they actually, I think they've started sending out notifications to connect, they being the Board of Health. So there will start being flow coming into that station.
Yeah.
But it will be minor in the grand scheme of the ultimate build out, which the Route 28 West project, as you'll remember, starts at that pump station and continues further west all the way out to 149, whereby we'll convey all the wastewater from the western part of town all the way to the treatment plant.
Yeah. And that was quite a construction project. I mean, I drive by there occasionally, and I remember there was that very tall crane that was there for a while, and there was a deep hole in front, and that was just an amazing project. Not that I ever stopped to look at it, but if I had
It absolutely was. Yeah, I mean, so the excavation was 45 feet down.
Wow.
And it was 50 feet by 50 feet in footprint, approximately. So the pump station is 3 levels down into the ground, and they're much higher than your residential floors. You know, it's about 12, 15 feet per floor. It's an impressive structure when you go in.
It's like an iceberg. Most of it's underground.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it does look like a house almost.
Yeah,
It's
well, that's what we try to do with all of these. We try to blend them into the neighborhood as best we can.
Yeah. And Dan or Griffin, does either of you remember what the cost was to build that pump station? Round numbers?
Yeah, that pump station was about $8.5 million for that pump station. The total project, which included some sewering on Finney's Lane from Waquaket Lane to 28, and the force mains from that pump station all the way to the treatment plant, was an additional $14 million. I think it was about a $22 million project.
Wow.
We had 2 contracts.
Wow. Well, anyway, impressive work. Jim Sproul, Jeremy, Chuck, any other comments, questions?
No, I'm fine. We've seen this before, and as everyone had said earlier, just good work on their part.
Yeah. Griffin, if you could send that slide deck to Gareth for circulation to CFAC, that will help the CIP committee do its work. The CIP subcommittee of CFAC do its
Absolutely.
work on its report. We have our first meeting tomorrow on that.
I will send it out before I leave the office.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you, all 3 of you, for taking the time on a Monday night in January to give us this presentation. So again, thank you so much. And if we have questions, we'll follow through with Dan or Griffin directly.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. Well, I'm just amazed at all the stuff that goes on the engineering side in this town, and it's not something that any of us encounters, but there's a lot to do, and this entire sewer project is just just the amount of work is just incredible. So I'm very impressed. Correspondence from committee members, item 4 on the agenda. Any comments, questions? Jim, did you want to say anything about tomorrow's subcommittee meeting?
No, I didn't have any comments for today, no.
Okay. Chuck, you are going to participate tomorrow? Yep, okay. All right, communications from staff. Gareth, you have anything to relate to us?
Yeah, well, obviously, from tonight's presentation, you've kind of seen the CIP processes moving forward, getting closer and closer to the March 3rd delivery date to the town council. So
Right.
we've delivered to the town manager kind of the finance department's ballpark of what we think we can afford based on our cash flow analysis for the next kind of 30 years. And that's, I think, helped DPW and other departments kind of whittle down that list of priorities that you saw tonight.
Yeah.
So that's gone to the town manager, as well as the scoring from our CIP session. So he can start to kind of construct his recommendations around these projects in addition to the departments.
So Dan's comment that they had cut back some subset of projects to a target amount of $15 million. Was that a substantial cutback for them?
Well, if you look at the total general fund,
Yeah.
300 million,
Yeah.
15 million is a cutback, but it's not a surprise, and it's probably on the higher end of what we'd like to see. So I think it certainly makes forward progress, but in the grand scheme of things, you've still got $300 million worth of projects.
Right.
Gareth, is that 16 million? Is that 16 million payments, or is that interest on payments?
That's 16 million in borrowing authorizations.
Just borrowing authorization. Okay.
Yes, so from that you can extrapolate that we'll have enough to cover debt service on those projects over the amortization of the
So
project.
it was 16 million, not 15 million? Dan said
Still
15.
a work in progress. It's about 15 million.
15 to 16.
Yeah, and you've also got to understand that there's cash funded projects that we might look at, like the roads program is 2.9 million from capital trust fund reserves, and then $1 million from chapter 70. So we say $15 million in borrowing authorizations, but the total package for the CIP might be 25 to 30 million. So
right, but the town is going to be on the hook for 15 or 16 million
to borrow. Yes.
Yeah.
And the only other,
the scoring sheet, is that something that we can see? I'd just be curious to look at some of those rankings of projects.
Yeah, you've got a subcommittee group meeting tomorrow. I can certainly send out the CIP scoring in the morning.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that would be good. Sproul, Shea, McKenzie, and Gunther are going to be at that meeting, and maybe Lillian. I'm not sure.
I'll send out the entire group.
Great, good, thank you.
On other fronts, the first go round of the FY26 state budget came out last week. The cherry sheet estimates from the state are, while we haven't delved deeply into them yet, at a glance, they're looking about what we initially projected. A little short on chapter 70 aid by about 300,000, I think it was. But as always, it's early in the process, and as the state goes through their budget process, you'll tend to see kind of each of the houses kind of trying to outdo one another. So we'll probably end up hitting our targets there. But we'll obviously send you an update on projections as we dive into it.
And you said use the word cherry sheets.
Yes,
What is that?
Mark has not given you the cherry sheet education.
Not I. Anybody else know what that is?
So back in the day, all the communications from the state was published on a pink sheet or a cherry-colored sheet, and it was the revenue and expenditure estimates that the state was going to assess or provide to towns, and the name is always stuck, so it's known as the cherry sheet. So if you search the state's Department of Revenue Division of Local Services for cherry sheets, you would get a listing of what state aid will receive each year, plus any assessments against that. But it's kind of in the day of computers and websites, the cherry sheet has lost its purpose, but it's what it's called.
Jeremy, you were going to say something?
Oh no, I just had I was familiar with the term.
You were. From your days in the Sandwich Finance Committee?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, there's a whole lot of terms of art in the municipal finance world that I'm still learning, so. All right, well, I unless folks have anything else to cover, I think we got off easy tonight, only 90 minutes. Chris King, any other parting comments? I appreciated your questions during the presentation.
No, it was a very good night and a lot of good information.
Yeah, I think Griffin Bowden is a rock star. That's my, and I know a lot of other people think the same way. He's just got a very nice style. He's extremely knowledgeable.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate to have him here.
Yeah. So, and he's got a lot of balls in the air these days.
Mhm.
So, all right. So, I think that's it for tonight. The mechanics for the Zoom call tomorrow night, Gareth, are you handling that, or is that Mark handling that?
Mark has not asked me at this point. Speaking with him earlier today, it sounds like he thought he'd be back tomorrow.
Okay.
But if he does not manage that, then I'm certainly available if that's the case.
Okay, good. All right. Well, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So I'll second that. I'll
Great.
second it.
Thank you. Chuck, could you call the roll, please?
I will. Hector,
Yes.
Chris King,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
and Chuck is yes, so we're good.
Great. Thank you all.